Hold on a second.
There we
Can
go.
you hear?
I gotcha.
All right. Yes, I can hear you now.
Good morning. I'm going to bring Dave Kittle on with the three of us. Good morning,
Morning.
everyone. PT Breakfast Club, Monday morning, 8:30. I'm Tony Maritato. Dave Kittle is in the middle, and Dr. Erson Religioso the third. I practiced that name all morning to make sure I got it.
Well, if
Uh,
only I was Italian.
oh,
It's religioso.
Oh, okay. Better. I'll let you
Yeah,
say it. So
religioso.
here's the deal. I was saying before you guys jumped on, this is a true honor once again. You know, when I first joined social media, when I first got on Facebook, Dr. E was one of the first people I found. And people tell me they think I'm pretty productive. They're like, Tony, how do you have the time? How do you do all this stuff? I don't even pale in comparison to what you have been able to do across multiple platforms. So I would imagine I've watched a bunch of your interviews. I imagine most of your interviews are more clinical. They're more, treatment based. I mean, you're a genius when it comes to what you do with patients in the clinic. Today, though, I really want to kind of focus on the business side of what you do. So you can hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. I'm just
Okay.
trying to. I feel like I'm so much closer than everyone. I'm just gonna like back up a little bit and adjust my camera. All right. Yeah.
I think it's perfect. No worries. So give us kind of an overview from a business perspective. And please, I'll ask you questions, share as much or as little as you want. Absolutely no pressure to share anything. But from a business perspective, like, how do you view your business? Give me the different components of your business. I know you do treat a few patients in person, but you're an
Mhm.
educator, you're a product creator, like social media. Give me, in your own words, an overview of your business model.
Oh wow. I mean, many hats, I would say.
Yeah.
Even though they all say E on them. Yeah, I mean, I started off as a clinician, a long time ago. My first job was in residency, and then after that, I started managing a clinic for a local group here in Buffalo, New York. But on day one of the interview, they asked me, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I said, owning my own practice. And that was like my short-sighted way of like I just thought I would be so productive and make the money that I wanted to make to be able to support a family that I thought I was going to have. Um, and then that just didn't. So my first practice actually was a little different. It was a practice within a practice model. When I left that group, I was, let's see, we were having our third kid, and my wife is a PT, and she had worked 363 days for a certain company. And they said, oh, if you had worked 2 more days, we could give you the full 3 months off. But as it
Oh,
is, you could only get, whatever it was, 6 weeks off. And she said, oh, well, I can't really she told me I can't really take 6 weeks off. I'm going to take the full 3 months or longer. And I said, okay, sure. But I had also just left my company that I had taken a practice from part-time to full-time, me with like a waiting list. And, initially it was only me. Then I had like a PT and a PTA, and I left that company. And one of my friends had started a clinic, and he said, well, I can't afford to pay you because I just started one, but I'll just pay you per patient. So I had this kind of like patient, almost like how a stylist or something rent a chair. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So it's not like
Yeah.
I was renting a table, but I got full use of the facilities, but I was just paid per patient. So it was like this clinic within a clinic model, which was also very confusing because a lot of the patients who came for me or referred to me were referred for my business. Yet, and even though I had no business cards, I had no logos or anything all over the practice. You know what I mean? So people thought I
Yeah.
worked for him, which in the back I should have been more humble, but I was always like slightly irritated about it, because I wasn't working for him, and we were colleagues, but it was his name all over the practice. So in the middle of that, I had also just produced this thing.
Yeah.
So the edge tool was kind of like put me on the map, and um, I just thought initially my goal was to just sell them locally, maybe to patients and local clinicians. And my wife had told me, well, not going back to work, I just, are we ready for this? And I was like, well, not really. I mean, we bought our dream house dependent on a two-person salary, and I just started this job, and I literally have like barely any income because it turns out moving 5 minutes down the road from a full-time practice where I had a waiting list, like less than 25% of my patients came with me, and I had only taken a month off for paternity leave. I just erroneously assumed that all these patients that had been building up all this goodwill would just come with me. But because I left, my secretary left, my PTA left, my PT left, they all went like different directions. The majority of my patients went with the PT who I had trained. And I was just like
Uh,
flabbergasted, And I was like, man, 5 minutes down the road, and like at least 25% of the patients stayed at the clinic that I was at, even though it was like a total scab staff. And I was like, what are you guys loyal to the building? I mean, like literally no one is there. And they're like, oh, my script says this address on it. And I'm like, well, that's just a suggestion. It's just not like you don't have to go there. Um, so I had no choice but to really like ramp up. And that's what I always tell people, like when you're starting a business or when you're trying to feed your family, there's nothing like risk that will just make you
right.
hustle.
Yeah.
Because we had just had our third kid. My wife was not going back to work. So I thought, well, I'm going to maybe try to sell my Edge tool online. And at the time, it was called the Fauciolator. Um, and because back then, I believe that you could break up fascia. And, I had joked that it was like this, it was like the Terminator. Like it was a tool from the future that's going to come back and break up your fascial adhesions, to change the future for the better. So initially, I called it the Fauciolator, and I started selling that online. And my goal was actually in developing the manualtherapist.com was to drive people back to the site because I
Right.
realized that it was like this kind of like this one-time purchase, right? Like a hammer. And I would tell people that you go to hammer.com, you buy one hammer, you don't go back to hammer.com because once you realize how to use the hammer, there's no reason to go back.
Right.
But because over the years leading up to my residency, my fellowship, and everything, I'd taken probably like between 50 and 70 con ed courses. I developed this rather what eventually became an eclectic approach, the eclectic approach. So I started blogging about that and how I used my Edge tool. And initially, like if you go back and look at my early manualtherapist.com posts, it was all about me using my Edge tool. But then people started being interested in on how I used it with neurodynamics and how I did soft tissue work and manipulation. And um, I ended up getting a lot of teaching gigs with that. So my goal to bring people back to buy more edge products ended up getting me teaching gigs all over the world. I started getting a lot of people like Mike Reinold, Charlie Weingroff, Julie Wiebe, like making a lot of like early connections with like the very few amount of PT influencers at the time. They started sharing my stuff. So yeah, it just kind of blew up. I mean, that's kind of how it started. And then eventually um, I called it the Edge Mobility Tool. Tim Flynn from Evidence in Motion had contacted me. They're like, hey, look, we're interested in using your fauciolator in our dry needling and ISTM courses, but you got to call it something else. Like it got to call it something more professional. So I kind of held a contest on Facebook. And one of my colleagues that used to work with me, Dr. Jerry Moriarty, he said, hey, why don't you call it the Edge tool? It fits in with the whole E theme, like Dr. E, because I'd already started calling myself Dr. E because everyone gets my name wrong, my first name and my last name.
Yeah.
So I started calling it the Edge tool. I tried to patent it, but I couldn't patent it. And we can get into that later. And then I eventually started developing a whole line of products based around edge mobility.
Wow.
Because the whole purpose of me developing the Edge tool, Edge mobility tool, was to get like a high quality product that I had vetted and maybe created. But I looked at other things like the TRX or BFR cups or something, and they're like medically priced. So I just thought, well, I can source these, either create them or find someone and white label it, and creates like products that any PT could buy, like who's in my position, like just starting off, or maybe even
Yeah.
patients could buy. They could use them for home because I used to think, well, it's dangerous for patients to use these things, but they're using them anyway. They're like
Right.
whatever, doing up to down kettlebells, bottoms up kettlebells to release their psoases, doing all kinds of like crazy massage guns on like all over their body. So I just thought, well, I might as well sell them to patients too.
So
So
Erson,
That,
that's
I
kind of
mean,
that's kind of the short of it.
I
so
love it because there are so many similarities and so many of these stories, like even between you and I, once again, there's a lot of little things that happen to you that also happen to me. There's nothing more motivating than knowing that you've got to pay for things. I know a big urgency in my life early on was starting a family, knowing that I was going to have to get money in the bank account. Nothing like that to keep you motivated. Now today, I feel like I'm too comfortable. And so I don't have the motivation and the urgency to really do anything with my business. So it just kind of sits there. Dave, I'm sure you have some ideas in your head or questions that you wanted to ask. But before we do, so when I look at your business from the outside looking in, I see the patient care aspect, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, are you the only therapist who treats patients for your business?
Yeah, I've always been solo. I've never even had a VA.
Yeah. Have you ever did you ever have that vision of like, I'm going to open a facility, I'm going to hire a therapist, I'm going to train them in kind of my vision, and we're going to deliver the patient care experience that you want to deliver? But then what made you decide I'm just going to stay solo?
Well, I mean, I guess it was kind of like if you want a job done right, you got to do it yourself kind of thing. But I mean, I had worked in a practice and I loved working with students full time. As
Yeah.
as I was, starting to build my social media presence and starting to sell more products, at one point I realized that as successful as my practice had become, and that second practice within a practice, I eventually built up again full time, another waiting list. It only took like 6 months for everyone to kind of find me again, doctors to start referring to me. So that was very successful. But I remember like when I was doing my taxes about a year or a year and a half into selling products and teaching courses. So I'd split up my business into two LLCs, like my teaching and clinical business, and then my product business. So then just looking at my products supplemented by my courses, I realized that in like 1 quarter, I had made more than I made in my practice.
Yeah.
So I just thought, why am I working full time? You know,
Yeah.
like let me step back from this and try to develop this a bit more. Um, so that's even though I love treating patients, I also my passion is really teaching and also spending time with my family. I should say spending time with my family and teaching because my goal now is, not only of course to sell products to supplement my my income and everything, but it's to help the next 10,000 patients. Because someone asked me that very early on in me starting this. They're like, "Do you want to help, 100 patients a week, or do you want to help 10,000 patients a week?" So my goal is to help 10,000 patients a week, and not only by myself, but I still get to treat but teaching other people how to be better clinicians is how with like a simple approach, not like this
Right.
complex manual therapy residency slash fellowship. You need like 30 courses to be a master clinician. I just think that anyone can get my results by taking my one course. Like you only need to you need how to learn how to like motivate people and how to treat them and how to empower them with simple techniques. It doesn't have to be like this, minutia. I know minutia
Yeah.
sells, but anyone can get guru like results with very simple techniques and simple assessments. Um, so I don't know if that answered your questions. I tend to derail the train quite a bit, but there's so many like
so
facets of what I do. But yes, I've never hired anyone. Even with doing my social media, my sites, my podcast, my website, my video and audio editing, everything like that, I just do it all myself.
Dave, what's on your mind?
all right, so full disclosure, Tony wanted Erson to come on. I was like, absolutely, he's going to be a great interview. I said to Tony right away, I was like, hey, I bought 3 edge mobility tools. I have one. My wife Annie is a physical therapist. She has one, and then one of my other physical therapists. So I and Erson is not paying to be on here. Like, we just wanted to come on here and riff. And, I sometimes I like to mention the, full disclosure, no product placement or anything, because Erson really has been around for a long time, content side, social media, like Tony said, and then also the physical product side. So I think I should mention, so as soon as Tony mentioned on LinkedIn yesterday about Erson coming on, and Tony posted about it. So I had a couple PTs reach out to me. One is Zachary Feiner. He said, hey, Dave, I just came across the PT Breakfast Club podcast and particularly interested in tomorrow's episode, which is now. And then he said he's in the early stages of creating his own rehab product, and he's excited to learn about Erson's story with Modern Edge, and he looks forward to hearing more content from Tony and I, from Zach Feiner. So what would be like maybe some of the early components, Erson, of a physical product? So maybe it's the Edge mobility tool. I know we'll kind of get into some of your other physical products, but what's like the first couple of steps? Like, is it you have to find you have some intuition of like, there's a need and there's a market for a particular product, and then where do you go? Like, is you design things, you do sketches, do you find white label products and then rebrand them? Like, I don't know, what were some of the early steps in like the Edge mobility tool in terms of like where it even came from?
Well, when I was doing manual therapy and soft tissue work, I had this really crude kind of wooden tool that I had based upon some kind of tool that I got. Excuse me.
Sorry, AirPod came out. We're live. It's all good.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that I got from the Institute of Physical Art, and it was very crude. Like, I called it a wooden knuckle because it was supposed to kind of like replicate doing soft tissue work like that. So we were using them on patients with success, but they looked like snowflakes. I called them basically because every single one was different. I had patients who were woodworkers. They're like, "Oh, I can make those things for you." I sold them for like whatever, $15. I don't know. But again, they were snowflakes, so I thought, well, maybe I can mass produce this thing. But in the middle of me using this, I remember treating the son of a local chiropractor who also taught at one of the chiropractic schools in New York here, Buffalo, New York. And he thought, hey, he said, let me bring you in these Graston tools. And I was like, well, what's that? Right. And so he showed me these tools and I was like, oh yeah, that's fascinating. And he's like, oh, can you feel the fascial adhesions? And at the time I thought I could, because I don't believe in that stuff anymore. We can get into that maybe in a future podcast, not now.
Yeah.
And I said, well, these are awesome. How much are these things? Like $3,000. And again, I was only working for someone at that time, so it was like, I was like, what? That's crazy. These things can't possibly be worth $3,000, So I did like a preliminary Google search at the time, and there was nothing on the market. I mean, there was something that was similarly shaped to this. I don't remember exactly what it was called, and it was anodized aluminum. So I thought it was cool, but it was rather on the crude side. It was a bit harder to hold. So I had a student, and a lot of this is just like happened to be right place at the right time. I had a student who was a former engineer. So I said, hey, look, if I come up with some kind of like physical drawing of a tool of how I want it to look, can you make a CAD drawing for me? So he made this CAD drawing for me. And then I went around to local manufacturers and I found one who could make it. And that was really difficult because I thought like, oh yeah, it would be easy. You just go to some kind of steel manufacturer and they can cut it out of steel. I had no idea what it was like. And that's where I realized like it's difficult to talk to an engineer. First of all, I'm talking to an engineer, and the engineer who ended up being my neighbor. My neighbor also like refined the tool. Like my student made the drawing, but my neighbor's an engineer. Is like, oh yeah, sure, we can do this. And they're talking about like, tolerances down to like this whatever micrometer or something like that. And I'm like, I don't care. It's not this like moving part that needs to fit into the space shuttle, otherwise it's going to explode. Like, it's all right if it's not to some tolerance. And I'm trying to just say like, can't you just make this in this shape? And they're like, well, we can do this and we can chamfer this. I'm like, I don't know what a chamfer is. I don't know what, you eventually learn how to like talk to an engineer. And I felt like before as a PT, I always loved having engineers as patients because I loved physics. I used to tutor physics, but this is a whole nother level. And I'm like, I just need like, I felt like I needed a translator to be able to talk to the engineer to tell them what I wanted.
Yeah.
So eventually I started mass producing this thing. And the hard part is every single manufacturer that I found would do a good job for maybe like 2 or 3 thousand units. And then I'm purchasing them maybe like 100 to 200 to 300 at a time. And then all of a sudden I would purchase 300. And then all of a sudden I would start getting hit with returns like, oh, hey,
Oh,
these things are just like totally messed up. And, you think they're going to make the same thing over and over and over again. And I'm probably on like my sixth manufacturer, and I've stuck with this guy for probably the last 6 or 7 years. But every manufacturer up to then, I had to just like eventually let go because not only did they
wow.
raise prices, but their quality just totally dropped. Like they would have scuffs all over them. They would, people would be scraping them. They end up like scratched or bleeding. Um, the finish would be wrong, and I'd already purchased so many. So um, something like this, I think if you have a physical product, it's quite a bit easier to do than something with moving parts. With moving parts, I
Yeah.
don't really have that much um, that much experience. But the first thing you would do if you have the idea for a product is talk to an engineer. And again, if any of your patients are engineers, it's great because you end up like I'm a big fan of the barter system. It's like, hey, I'll give you free
Right.
treatment. You give me like draw free CAD drawing, things like that. So that's what I ended up doing at the time because I didn't have this huge budget. By the time I came up with something like Edge Mobility Tool, I wanted to patent it, but it turns out that if you want to patent a product, you have to have the faith in your product and pay for that patent. And something even like I mean, at the time, like 12, 13 years ago, yeah, I think a simple patent for this shape in the US only would have been like $7,000 to $10,000.
Yeah.
But you could only do that if you haven't promoted it and you haven't sold it. Because I
Wow.
already promoted it and sold like, I don't know, over 1,000. You just can't do it. So it's like that's the hard thing about having an idea for a product is you can't make money off of it if you want to patent it
That's
first.
crazy. Yeah. I've never heard
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean, I treated one of Buffalo's best patent lawyers.
Wow.
And I would highly recommend his services. And yeah, I mean, that's what he said.
And so
So
then when you're placing these orders, you're getting, a couple hundred at a time. Are they coming to you? Are you then, I was looking through various outlets you have. Let me make sure I've got it right. Are you on Amazon? I know you had been previously. Like I was on Amazon, Edge Mobility.
yeah, I
That's
am on
you, right?
Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah, initially I started selling on Amazon. Like I had this really crude blogger-based website that had a PayPal checkout, but I initially started selling on Amazon. So Amazon is where I made like my initial tools and my initial, thousands and thousands of sales. And I thought I was invincible. Like I remember telling you on my podcast or maybe in the background or something after the podcast that I'd
Yeah.
sold so many that I thought I'd literally never have to do anything again. Like I just was going to ride the coattails of Edge tool sales for the rest of my career, like as if Apple could just get away by selling the first iPhone forever and never
Right.
make iterations or updates or have any other products. Like the most successful company in the world still has, they may have a Halo product, but they still like innovate, even though I don't know if Apple really innovates anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah, so I'm
yeah,
I'm looking and you've got like the knee terminator, you have a folding mirror therapy box, you have the Edge mobility tool. Are these all coming from different manufacturers and are they going straight to Amazon and doing fulfillment by Amazon?
I'm doing fulfillment by Amazon. But initially, as an entrepreneur, and I know a lot of other PT entrepreneurs who sell physical products who started off like this, I was fulfilling everything out of my garage.
Wow.
And I mean, and we're talking like the less. So when I stepped out of patient care, even though I went, that was my motivation to actually go cash based. I thought, well, I've always wanted to go cash based. Now that there's no risk for my clinic, and because I have all this other
Right.
alternative revenue coming in from seminars and products, I'll just go cash based. So even though I was still treating patients, the majority of my time was like just listening to music and packaging up edge tools, printing labels from my printer, and then shipping them out of my mailbox. My whole mailbox was just stuffed full of edge tools
Yeah.
every day. I would just like stuff it full of edge tools, or I would bring edge tools to work and like hand them to the mailman, and mailman would be like so irritated that I'm like handing them all these packages. Um, so I fulfilled probably out of my house for maybe 2 years, and I just thought like, yeah, it's got to be an easier way to do this, you know.
Yeah.
And at the time, between then, Amazon had also something happened, and I remember thinking like, oh, I'll just switch to FBA. So I switched to FBA, fulfilled by Amazon. So that was easier. But in the meantime, I just thought like Amazon is also taking so much of a cut of these things that I want to try to sell them a bit more on my own. So I switched my Blogger site to a Shopify site and looked for fulfillment. And you know, there was this app called ShipBob that was kind of like, it said like, oh, we can remotely fulfill you. It was like a fulfillment house. So I shipped like the majority of my products, Edge tool, mirror boxes, and the Terminators, my cups, and everything to ShipBob, and that went well for several years. And then ShipBob also, again, they scaled so much from one warehouse to like several warehouses all over the country. They were like, we can ship anywhere in 2 days, like Amazon. But also, the customer service tanked. They lost literally thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in my products.
Oh,
And their customer service like got outsourced to a different country, and I would just have to fight and fight and fight to like get reimbursed for their all these losses. So at this point, and I went with them for years. One of the early adopters. Now I just use like a local fulfillment house for the majority of my products. So um, again, I used to fulfill everything out of my garage, and now I strongly recommend that once you can afford it, you just use a local fulfillment house, so I can again spend more time like promoting my stuff, you know, doing podcasts like this,
yeah.
um, being with
So
my family.
I was looking on your website and I shared some of the links in the comments so anybody could go check it out. theedgemobilitysystem.com, new products. When I go into any of these products, I realized it was a Shopify store. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And so somebody goes, they purchase, the Shopify takes the payment, and then you have a local fulfillment house that actually ships the product for you. Now you have some big stuff, like there's a trifold aluminum table. Are you sourcing all of these products? You've got this portable red light therapy. You're buying stock inventory in this, putting it at this local fulfillment house?
I would say everything that is the majority of products that are branded Edge Mobility are stored at my local fulfillment house.
Okay.
Some of the stuff like the red light therapy I just started selling, but that is
Yep.
through Shopify Collective. So Shopify Collective is kind of like you can cross sell
Right.
any like I'm on Collective. You can cross sell anything for a portion, but it natively looks like it's on your store. Other
I
things like
see.
the table, I don't necessarily buy in bulk. I drop ship,
Yeah.
and it's white
Okay.
labeled.
Okay.
So if you guys aren't
The
familiar with drop shipping,
dynamometer.
you find a supplier, Shopify takes the order, then Shopify sends the fulfillment house or the supplier of that. So I get less of a cut, but it's less risky because I don't have to buy like 100 or 200
Yeah.
tables.
Yeah. Have you ever looked into doing custom bundles on Amazon, like taking 2 or 3 products, putting them together, creating it as a new SKU? I don't know what Amazon calls it, and having it as a new product listing on Amazon?
I was thinking of doing that of like of my own stuff for
Yeah.
sure. I don't know. I'd have to look into that, but I recently just filed for Amazon brand registry because I went this entire time. We're talking 12 years with a DBA as Edge Mobility, but I
Okay.
never ended up with a trademark. You know, I have like a common law trademark because I've been doing it so long. Like someone actually once said, like, "Hey, you know, one of these products you're white labeling, we have the same mark," and I'm like, okay, but how? And they sent me this kind of cease and desist thing with like,
Yeah.
and then, but then my lawyer, who again is like this super big time patent lawyer, um, he's like, oh yeah, you know, I googled their lawyer, and she's just like some new grad who's like has like a mailboxes like mailbox doesn't even actually have an office, and so he just sent them like this, oh yeah, well, you know, person's been doing this for so many years, and even if you patented it, like you're not going to, even if you, I shouldn't say patent is for a design, a mark is for a word, right? Like Edge Mobility System. Like even if you try to file for this, he'll get it because he's actually been selling it under this common law Mark for like 15 years. He has all these Amazon
Uh,
records and Shopify records and everything. Um, but the advantage of me finally getting the trademark is because Amazon has had so many issues with copycats
yeah.
and not just white labeling, but like purely just like fraudulent products that claim to be like a Graco baby seat, but it's really some like fake baby seat from China, you know?
Yeah.
Um, that you have to have brand registry now. Because I listed all these products on Amazon under Edge Mobility many years ago, and many years ago, all I had to put was like, "This is a mirror box by Edge Mobility System." And
Right.
now, like I remember, I tried to just last year, I tried to list a couple more of my products, and they asked me for all these things. Like, not only can I not edit my current products, but I can't even list any new products, even though I own Edge Mobility, because I didn't have brand registry. You have to have a trademark to be able to sell under that brand now. So not just like any like like I guess a company from China can't just say like we're selling Greco baby seats anymore
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
because they have to be able to upload like certain things like which is actually pretty easy. You have to just show pictures of like a box with Graco on, and then if they do that, they're allowed to do it. Or maybe a bot, vets it or something like that. Because it seems like it's actually on like an automated refusal process.
Oh, I see.
So now, but also with brand registry, it goes from like your typical kind of Amazon listing. Like when you look at an Amazon product, there are two types of web pages. There's like the landing page that looks like every other Amazon product, which all of mine is like this picture on one side. It's like how you know something is Shopify, right? Just like a
Yeah.
picture and like a description. But then I was
Right.
like, oh man, there are like some Amazon landing pages that look like an amazingly designed web page, right? With like it looks like it has HTML, maybe it has GIFs or moving images or something more than that. And it's obviously more attractive, makes the product look more official. You can't have that unless you have brand registry.
I
So I'm in
see.
the process of going through getting that trademark now, so I'll be able to have like those better Amazon pages. And with that, once I do that, then I'm going to bundle more of my products together and come up with
Yeah.
more of like an edge mobility toolkit with this and my star and more of like a handlebar tool.
Wow. Very nice. Dave, any product questions before I move on to the educational part?
Well, I thought on your main website, I thought you do offer some of the clustered items. Like I think a couple years ago when I bought 2 or 3 of the Edge Mobility tools, I thought I was offered a bundle of the Edge Mobility tool, the Star, and maybe like cups or
A
cupping or something.
pouch.
Do you offer
Yeah,
the
probably.
products on your main website?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all my products are on my main website, and Shopify is so easy to bundle things. Like I have like my cuffs and a Doppler and the online course and the online certification exam for like less than the price of the typical one live course that doesn't come with anything. So I do bundle a bunch of things, and of course then I have like your typical kind of like when you click the cart, then it's like, oh, do you want to add this? And then like after you purchase is like, hey, if you purchase this within the next whatever hour, then you get a 10% discount or free shipping on this too. So I have all those like kind of upsells as well.
Yeah, what I was referring to, and Dave, you might not realize this, and I'm not an expert, Erson, you know way more than me about Amazon and how it works, but I remember I wanted to sell like a tens unit. I wanted to source them, bring them in, sell it, but I wanted to bundle it with maybe a shoulder pulley and a Chattanooga ice pack. And if I did that, I could create a new listing with my own pricing. Whereas if I tried to sell something that's already being sold on Amazon, it's just going to kind of fall into the existing listings. So putting 2 or 3 products together allows you to create basically a new product to sell. And then of course, I also wanted to sell some educational content. Now, Erson, for you have these educational content, online seminars, unlimited access on your website, like full upper and lower body system, TMJ headache specialist. Are those therapist facing or are those consumer facing?
They're therapists. Yeah.
Okay. But
Yeah,
then
because they're approved for CEUs.
I see. And then you also have your live seminars, obviously, where you're traveling and doing that. If you were to look at kind of your business across multiple verticals, so you say, okay, I've got my patient care side of things, I've got my product side of things, I've got my educational component here. Where would you say the greatest amount of, one, revenue is coming from, two, profitability is coming from, and they might be the same category, but where kind of do you get the most of your income?
I would say the majority of my income is from products and sales.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, probably
I
like maybe
totally would have
some.
thought education because it's such a higher profit margin.
It is. It's just that, and initially it was. I mean, I started off teaching for a company called Medical Minds in Motion when I started blogging. Even though people were kind of offering me contracts, I didn't really quite know how to even get more or how to generate leads or anything like that. Medical Minds in Motion had broken off from, I believe, Northeast Seminars, and they put me on this whirlwind of a tour. Like I never knew what it was like to be the away team until I started teaching for them. I would teach like these 3 one-day courses on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They're like, yeah, you rent a car in Chicago, and then you're going to teach in Chicago. Then you're going to teach like 2 hours away from Chicago, then 2 hours away from there. You know, and by
Wow.
after doing this like twice a month, I would tell like I always tell jokes, in my seminars, but like by Sunday, I'm like, did I tell this joke already? Like I didn't even know because I'm teaching like the same course 3 days in a row to a bunch of different people. Um, so that I did make a lot of money doing that, but of course, and then I'm like, I'm just gonna launch my own courses. I'm only getting paid, whatever,
Yeah.
25%, 20% of like their take. And I could versus me just taking it all, right?
Right.
So I started asking these same hosts, like, oh, well, you just want to host me directly. So yeah, it is profitable for sure. I mean, like I charge like 650 a head. I get like but it used to also be very easy at the height of my blog to be able to fill like a course between 20 and 30 people. And I would just say because of MedBridge and so many people are doing it. And also, I don't know if you guys have traveled recently, but it's like
Yeah.
really expensive to fly and for hotel. Like the last time I taught a course in Boston, which is one of my mainstays, I used to just easily sell out there. Um, there's maybe 12 people in the course, but for me to fly there and get a hotel, it was like $1,400. And it's not like I fly
Wow.
first class or something for these courses. It's like how can I expect people to pay? And they would really want to have to come see me to fly or even stay at a hotel, even to drive like a couple hours to stay at a hotel. It would be really expensive on top of that. So yeah, it's profitable to sell courses, but also it'd have to be gone more.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had this rule that after I did that for maybe a year of doing it a couple times a month, that I only wanted to do it once a month and leave my family. One of my mentees that I taught in fellowship had told me like, oh yeah, the majority. I don't know if this is true or not. This is very anecdotal, but he's like, the majority of the faculty from X institute, like half of them are divorced because they make so
Oh,
much money. They're like, and plus you feel like rock stars, but you're traveling all the time. you
yeah.
know? And so I thought, well, I don't want that. That's not my goal. I mean, sure, can I make lots of money? Can I feel like a rock star? Because people are like, oh, yeah, you're great. This is an amazing course. Yeah, that's amazing. But what are you doing it for? If it's purely for your ego or you're single, that's great. But I mean, like, my goal is to support my family and be with my family,
Right.
which I think
Do you have any consumer facing educational things that you could sell, whether they be, recorded courses that you sell or anything like that, but for the consumer, for the patient?
I dabbled in that for sure. And a lot of consumers actually find like my YouTube videos and I end up getting some patients and a lot of virtual patients that way. But I just feel like that market, I don't know, as much time as I tried I had developed a whole TMJ course and I was going to put it on Udemy. And because
Yeah.
I noticed that there wasn't really a lot of competition at the time, maybe when I created this 3 or 4 years ago, and I just never ended up doing it because I'm just in a way spread too thin. Like I can't always have like I can't have everything,
Yeah.
like because I am only doing it myself. And I thought that that would be a great outlet, and it seems like a no-brainer, but for some reason I just never got around to it.
What would be your advice for a therapist who's out there listening to this and who's thinking, I don't want to go the consumer product route, but I do want to get into education and selling courses, whether it be profession facing, whether it be consumer facing. I want to talk about SEO because I know that you've had great success with SEO, but then you've also seen those challenges. But before we get to that, what would you tell that therapist who has the knowledge, has the experience, has the desire to share that information? What's their advice for getting into that market today?
Well, I mean, yeah, first you have to just find like what kind of problem are you solving, right? And who's your audience? Are you having a consumer facing product, or is it a professional course? Professional course, there's a whole series of resources that I would need you to contact. Like, do you want it to be CU approved? Because there are people who have like registered for my courses or even bought my online courses, and then they want to return because it's not like approved in every state, or it's not approved in their
Right.
state. You know, it's the crazy thing about the professional side is that getting a course CEU approved, it's like the Wild West. It's nuts. I don't know if you guys know who Katie O'Bright is. You guys know Katie O'Bright?
I know the name for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, she founded a course or a company that was initially in the pandemic. She thought like, oh, I'm just going to bring virtual courses to everyone. So she, like me, was like a startup, and she was teaching courses, and she wanted to get them approved as many states as possible. And the APTA used to have something called ProCert. ProCert was like, if you pay us $2,000, and I think it was something around $2,000, we'll approve your course for PTs and PTAs in as many states as possible. And that seems like this great deal
Yeah.
until you realize it was only like something like 13 to 16 states.
Oh,
Those states already had reciprocity. So they were literally doing nothing, because there was like some states, something like Michigan, if you got approved in Michigan, then 13 states had reciprocity. So the
yeah.
APTA was literally taking your money and just filing for the one state that would give you like very easy approval.
Right.
And then they eventually let Katie realize that too. So she just took it upon herself, like over a couple of years, to call all these states or write or fax like old school, get approval from all these states separately. And she just got all this momentum, like, hey, like I took over ProCert's business, so that was good for her because they basically gave her business. They got APTA got out of it, or state FSBPT got out of it. So she took over that part of it, and then um, she just got state after state after state. Now she has like 42 states.
Wow.
So if you go through her, then you get like 42, 43 states. And these last bunch of states are just holdouts, I guess. But that was a big boon to my business, because before that, if you're developing a professional facing course, you have to file for all these states separately. And all these states basically sometimes it's just file the paperwork, and other times it's you got to pay a fee. Like in New York, I had to pay a fee of something like $900 per course, but because I'm for profit. But if I was not for profit, you could just fill out the paperwork.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did you
so
say
that
is it
what's that?
redefine health education?
Redefine health education. Yeah.
All right. I've seen this site. I know I've been here. I'm going to share it in the comments for anybody who's interested.
Tell Katie I sent you,
Yeah, for
so I can
sure.
get some
I will.
referral credit.
It's
But if
one
you're
of those things where, like for my main course, it's a Learn Medicare Billing course. I of course looked into CEUs. And I was like, why am I even going to absorb the headache and the hassle and the expense of getting CEUs in every state? I can go to certain websites, get $99 unlimited CEUs, just knock out 24 of them on a site like that, and then just take my course because you want to take the course, not because you want to
right.
get the CEUs. And I have to wonder for you.
That's what I thought though too, Tony. I mean, I would say my ideal customer is someone who just
Sure.
wants to be the best clinician they can. And
Right.
the customer I don't want is someone who's like, I only want CEUs, and I'm gonna, oh, your course is not registered for CEUs in Illinois. Well, I'm gonna drop out of your course. Well, obviously
Yeah.
they don't have, you know, the best interest in mind. But could I have made money off of that customer? Sure. So do
Right.
I get more sales now because it's actually approved? Yes, I do. So I
Yeah.
mean, Katie just makes it really affordable. I would just say I would highly recommend you go through Katie. It's you just pay per hour. You get certified for 2 to 3 years. per the amount of time that, like, if your course is 5 hours, you just pay for like the 5 hours.
Right. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
definitely reach out to her. Dave, any thoughts so far?
So, Erson, Tony mentioned there's a higher profit margin with the courses, but again, for you or any other therapist, there's the time, the travel, all that, and kind of seeing between the lines, because there's other therapists that want to kind of hear more about the physical product side, which would kind of suggest that there's a lower profit margin on the physical products. Is there kind of a ballpark profit margin that you're looking for with a physical product? It's probably going to vary on cost of materials and weight and I don't know, many other things. You tell us. But like for example, with the Edge Mobility tool, like is there a profit margin of 10, 20, 30 something percent that you're comfortable sharing that would kind of like let us know the difference between the profit margin of a course that you're teaching in person, but then you give up your time versus the time you invest into a physical product, and maybe it's a different profit margin. Is there a profit margin that you're kind of comfortable with sharing with some of the physical products, Edge or any of the others?
Yeah, I mean, I like to at least make two to three times my cost. And sometimes, like initially with the Edge tool, it was like 4 to 5, 6 times my cost. It was crazy because bringing a product, I mean, that was like the the peak problem solving time of of like your ideal product would be like something that's super cheap where you can make 4 to 5 times that no one else has done. And I mean, imagine if someone said like, "Hey, I'm going to come in with an iPhone that costs $100 and it has like all the features of the iPhone and it's just as good as the iPhone." Like of course, like anyone, you can say that an Android phone does it, but it doesn't get the same. Like the Edge tool gave people like the same feeling as a Graston set, except for it was also just an all-in-one tool. So I mean, I would say minimally you want like 2 to 3 times your cost. Two is really stretching it because at this time, cost of materials is so high and cost of shipping is so high, and I mean, cost of everything. Yeah, like even though I'm selling probably the same amount of product, I'm making a lot less profit because everything has gone up. Even like the amount of the Amazon tax you pay for getting FBA, everything has gone up. So what I would definitely want to teach more seminars or even sell more digital seminars. When I sell digital seminars, that's easy because like all I do is I update them maybe once a year, but I get like everything for that. Then there's no cost of goods to sell for that other than the hosting cost, which isn't really. I just do that all through my Shopify site. So getting back to just doing seminars though, real quick, if you want to do online stuff professionally or virtually, you also have to find a platform, and all these platforms like Udemy or like that's pretty cheap. But something that everyone else uses like Thinkific, even though it seems very attractive and very easy to use, I don't recommend it because all these platforms say that like, oh, it's all in one. We have CRM, we have funnels, we have whatever. Um, I feel like all these platforms are very good at one thing, and then they just tack on features of that to say that they have all these features, but they're not really that great at them. And for the amount you pay for Thinkific, I can say it's a lot cheaper to just get a Shopify site and add a few plugins, and they can do the same thing. Because not only will that enable you to sell physical products, but I'll do all my online courses also through Shopify with just a couple plugins, and it's still cheaper than this one purpose thing like Thinkific. Because if I had Thinkific, I could sell my courses, but maybe only like one course. I'd still have to pay like 100 something a month per that one course. Versus Shopify was $30 a month for my Shopify site, plus maybe another 30 or $40 for like the different plugins that allow me to, I put all my videos on Vimeo, and then I have another plugin that allows you to deliver them like digitally via a link. And the thing with Shopify versus Thinkific is Shopify has all these other plugins you could add to like improve your SEO or because it's specifically directed at selling. But you can do multiple products plus turn your Shopify site into a full LMS, like a learning management system or learning. I don't know exactly what that stands for, but
Yeah, you got it.
that's what I would recommend.
That's what I
What do
need
you
to
use?
research.
What do you use, Tony?
Well, I need to research Shopify. So I've run the gamut. So I've got content on Udemy. The benefit of Udemy is it's got an audience, but it's not an audience for physical therapy per se, but it does have an audience They do produce SEO optimized content. So when you search my name, you'll see my Udemy show up in Google organic search. Udemy will pay for ads to promote your courses, but they also control the pricing of your courses. So if I'm going to produce something that I'm comfortable selling for $10 and I'm going to get 3 of those dollars, I'll throw it on Udemy. And I've done a lot of experimentation with Udemy. I also use Thinkific. I use Thinkific for my main course, but I'm not selling products. I don't have other things that I'm selling with that. So Thinkific, I could create a full course. I made over 6 figures on Thinkific before I ever upgraded to a paid account. And even now, the paid account's like $800 a year. It's way cheaper than some of the other platforms like School or Kajabi. And I've just always been on Udemy or Thinkific, so I'm just comfortable with it. I could pump out something really quick. But I really do want to check out Shopify now as I start to look at some of the drop shipping options, look at some of the other options. I've done courses that are just email courses. I've done WordPress plugins. You know, I was on ClickFunnels for a long time. I've done Teachable. Like I've run the gamut. I've had a lot of experience.
I've done all
Again,
those things too. Yeah.
yeah, you and I are so similar. Like I think you and I, we love the process. We love figuring this stuff out. We love learning about it. And there is no way, I don't think you probably could. I can't justify the expense in time to learn all this new stuff. So the reason why I do is because I just love the process. I love learning it and figuring it out. And like you, I'm not totally a one-man show, but I'm pretty close. So we're getting close to the top of the hour. I want to be very respectful. I want Dave to think of a parting shot, but the last question that I had for you, Dave is in the business of, you know, business. I mean, he's in acquisitions and doing all this stuff. I know when I started Learn Medicare Billing and I grew my YouTube channel, I'm growing my other media. In the back of my mind, there's the thought of, am I building something that I can package and sell at some point? Who I would sell it to, I don't know. I don't know who the ideal, you know, buying agent, whether it be like a large EMR company or a supply company. I've got an Amazon video influencer account. I've got all of these assets that are just kind of sitting in there doing okay, but it should be something that's packaged and sold to a bigger company that they can then leverage for higher profit products that they want to sell. Have you ever considered that between your blog, your social media, your products, your distribution? Have you ever considered, and I know you're not for sale now, but as an
Oh
exit
no, I'm totally for
strategy?
sale. I'm totally for sale. Like I
Or,
was
or
to my wife, I was like,
have you been approached? Have you ever been approached for someone, you know, a
I
company to?
haven't. No, I don't think I've ever had that kind of traction. You know, um, yeah. I
What?
mean, I also told my wife if someone wanted to pay me like $20 million to get my brand and just like take over everything and just be absorbed by corporate, I would totally do that. I mean, absolutely. I know a PT who was like doing Aaron LeBauer's mastermind group, and all of a sudden he was like on calls, and he said like he had to leave early because he was offered something like $25 million just for his IP.
Yeah.
You know, like, and that's I'm totally down for that. Like, would I love to be acquired by Evidence in Motion, or you know, like, or I know the PT Tech Dream is like, hey, let's do something to be bought by Web PT, like that kind of, you know, what
Right.
that's all of that, you know, what that's like, Dave. Like, absolutely, I would want that. I mean, because for me, even though I love and I'm attached to my brands, um, I mean, if that would allow me more freedom to spend with my family, retire early, whatever, I would totally do that for sure.
I will say though, as much as I've heard the dream of retire early, I don't know anybody that's built something big enough to get acquired or done something like that who actually retired early.
No, they always do something else, right? Yeah. No, I wouldn't
100%.
just rest on my laurels, that's for sure. I mean, like you, I would say I have scaled enough to the point where it's comfortable.
Right.
But am I always looking for am I always slowly adding products to my websites, you know, trying to maximize profits on Amazon for sure, because I'm comfortable, but I'm still hustling to sell as much stuff as possible. You know, like I don't want to just get to that point where I was before earlier on when I started selling again so many single products that I thought that I'd never have to do anything again.
Yeah.
You know, I don't
Well,
want to be that company. It was a great learning experience when my product got copied, and
yeah,
within a week of my product getting copied and being sold for like $29 on Prime,
right.
also that Google had dropped my SEO and my blog ranking. I used to get like 2 to 4,000 hits a day to 200 hits a week. Within a
Oof.
week, it's just tanked.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we have a tradition started by Jimmy McKay, who started the podcast originally. We asked for the parting shot. So think about just one or two sentences that you would want to leave with the audience to think about. I'm gonna go first. So my parting shot is, again, it seems so ridiculous, but every time we interview somebody who has success, who's worked hard, who's built something, I hear the same commonality, the same thread going through the story. You know, they've built something to satisfy a need. They built something that helped themselves. They built something that helped their community. And there's just so many similarities in the stories that I hear. I appreciate it so much when you share it so that other therapists can hear it. Dave, what's your parting shot?
Yes, parting shot is resiliency. I'm so glad that Erson mentioned that he went through like 6 or 7 manufacturers until he
Yeah.
actually found someone who could reproduce the molds and get the product correct and have it delivered properly without chargebacks or returns or refunds or whatever. And so I've not done physical products, but anyone that's watching or listening that is wanting to get into physical products, it's just a reminder that you need to just be obsessive. You need to have resiliency. You need to go through a lot of hurdles, and it's not going to be easy with your first product or your first manufacturer. And I'm just glad that Erson mentioned, like, it took that many manufacturers, and it might take you, watching or listening, might take you more, or it might, maybe you find success on your third manufacturer, but it will take time and effort. And it was awesome to hear more of Erson's story.
Yeah,
Erson, parting
I
shot.
guess. Yeah, my parting shot would be you can do it if you hustle. I mean, I would say I got really lucky in developing a product where there was a huge need for that no one else had done, and I brought it at very low cost to something that was like previously prohibitively expensive for the majority of clinicians. There are definitely a lot of avenues out there for you to do it, but I mean, entrepreneurial ship is a roller coaster, and those highs are met with lots of lows. You got to be ready for that. Um, you a company that I'm involved with, Updoc Media, with they one of the founders, Gene, would always tell people, and I think this is definitely true. Like I or someone like Anthony or Dave, we could help you. We could help you run your own business or start your own product or sell your own product or something like that. But we can't tell you if it's right for you. That's the
Yeah.
hardest part. Like you have to be ready for those highs and lows. It's not just like this, grass is, it's one of those grass is always greener on the other side kind of things. There's I know a lot of people who have released products and they seem very successful, and all of a sudden, they're just gone.
Yeah.
Or they build
Yeah.
up a whole brand and everything, and then some things happen, and then now they're like working as clinicians again.
Yeah.
So always stay hustling.
All right. Well, quick shout out to UpDoc, Ben and Gene. That was actually the first Facebook group I ever joined. Ben was one of the first people I connected with. Gene was the guy who got me to put a photo on my Facebook profile because I wanted to stay anonymous. So
You're one of those. You're
I
one of those anonymous head
yeah,
icons.
I was that for a long time, and Gene was the
No
one who
wonder I've never
finally
seen you
got.
before. I can't believe we've never connected. It's
I know.
crazy.
I know, and the funny part about Gene is he would always maul physical therapists who wore the classic physical
Oh
therapy
yeah.
polo. So when I put my shirt up, I
Look at you
had the
guys with your
physical therapy
collars.
polo. Yeah.
Gene would be
All right.
disgusted.
Yeah, he was. He was totally. He had a product too, though, a cervical device that I purchased when he was one of the
Yeah, yeah.
first. Yeah. All right. I'll put all your socials. I'll put all your contact in the description of the video. Erson, it's amazing. Thank you so much. I really hope we can have you back.
Yeah, I'll come back anytime.
All right. Hang tight.